Welcome back to Yoga Awakening. I'm Katie. And today's class is a Yin yoga class for suffering. So in this practice, we're going to be exploring some different ways to hopefully allow ourselves to be with whatever is present, to be with discomfort, to be with pain, to be with an experience of suffering with less fear. So one note here before we get started. So given the theme of our practice today, I want to remind you that this is your practice, your space, your container, if you will. So choose, you'll have some options, of course, in the poses that we take. Choose what feels best for you. So, of course, have with you whatever props you'd like. I certainly recommend some blankets and pillows. If you have a bolster or blocks, that's great too. So use those, and hopefully you will be able to explore perhaps some sensation in the shape, but without so much sensation that you can't be still or it becomes hard to be present. And you'll just need to judge that for yourself, to know, especially knowing what you know about what you're arriving in to your practice with, onto your mat with. So if there is pain, whether in the body or somewhere else in the being, emotional, physical. So being conscious of that, and we'll get started. So our first pose here is going to be a version of Happy Baby on the back. And we're going to come right into our first shape. So come down to the ground, bring the knees into the chest. And you'll have a couple options here about how this pose looks, what sort of configuration you'd like to choose. So just like I was talking about, this is one of those moments to make a choice, to listen to the body, maybe to play with finding a little bit of sensation, maybe backing off as you need to if the sensation is one that's hard to be still with. So the option here that I like the best is to allow the knees to be really wide and then bring the hands to grab either along the shin bone or maybe further down, ankles, feet. And then the key here, if you choose this variation, is just to allow the shoulders and the arms to still be soft and relaxed here. I find this option just very restful and relaxing. It also, for me, removes a little bit of the stronger sensation I have in the more traditional Happy Baby, where the soles of the feet point up towards the ceiling and I hold on to the feet with my hands. This is also an option that I like though, and maybe it's one that you prefer given your particular body or bony structure. So here's your more traditional Happy Baby. You could also potentially be grabbing a little bit lower, more traditional Happy Baby, or somewhere along this path of bringing the feet towards one another and the arms coming in between the knees to grab hold. So hopefully you're finding something there that's working for you where you can close the eyes and start to be still. landing here in this moment just as it is. So whatever shape you've picked, landing in it. Seeing if you can relax any parts of the body that don't need to be working. Maybe that means softening through the jaw. Softening through the belly. Just let yourself arrive here. So even if that means that what you're arriving with feels like a whole lot, maybe you're arriving with big emotions or many thoughts. Maybe there's something particular on your mind, something very particular that brought you to this practice, to click on this video. I'll invite you here in this first shape to start to draw your attention right in to the sensation that might be arising. And if there isn't very much sensation, that's okay too. If there's a lot of sensation, remember again, that might be a clue just to back off a little so you can be fully in the experience without the sensation overwhelming you. Because we're going to use these shapes to sort of create this safe and maybe more approachable container than what sometimes a real life might present to us in less expected ways. To start to ask what it would be like if we just were with the discomfort. Noticed the sensation or the experience or the emotions. Emotions can often present themselves in very physical ways too, and sensations in the body. So maybe you feel this here somewhere in the area of the inner thigh, the groin. We'll be here just for a moment or two longer. What is it like to remove any sense of what this pose should be, especially if you've been here before, and just notice, what does it actually feel like in this moment? Let that be the whole point of the pose. An opportunity to ask, what is my experience of it? Where do I experience it? Start to release, grab around for sides of the knees and thighs, and very slowly bring the knees together. Pause there and continue that inquiry. What about the sensation now? Even after the pose, I at least can Still sort of feel that sensation, that stretch kind of there, echoing in a different way. So feel the breath in and the breath out. Maybe here it might start to feel good to take a little bit of movement side to side. Notice too how that feels. Following the breath in and the breath out. And then release the feet to the mat and make your way over onto one side of the body through your fetal pose. From there, it's a slow press up to a seat. And we'll find your way into our next shape. So we're coming into a dragonfly pose, as we often call it in Yin yoga, or a wide-legged forward fold. So I like to switch orientation on my mat so I have a little more space. You might do the same. You might also grab a blanket or a towel if you have that with you and sit up right on the edge of it. We'll extend the legs wide. And then I'll start to gather some props out in front of me. It's possible you might also want to keep a soft bend in the knees. And if you're doing that, I would probably suggest bringing maybe some rolled up towels, possibly blocks if they're soft enough. Foam ones might be nice there. Underneath so that the legs can still feel heavy and relaxed. So props out in front that hopefully are going to be able to support some portion of the front body. And here you might not be folding forwards very far. This is often a challenging pose. It certainly is one for me in my body. Your other option is always to move your legs closer together, so a narrower V. So once again, a few different options. Take a moment exploring your body. For this class, although really for any yoga class, we're not concerned with what the poses look like, but instead with how they feel. What are we aiming for? What is their effect? So if you would like to fold forward a little bit here, you can find your way into that now. Might feel nice to keep a longer spine. It might feel nice to really allow the spine to round. Maybe finally they're tucking the chin, allowing the head to drop. We'll be here for several minutes. So I tell you that only so you know to get comfortable. The aim here is really, as it always is in Yin, to let time do the work. So we're giving ourselves this opportunity, but also this challenge, bringing ourselves into a slightly uncomfortable state. In this case, this stretch probably right there through the inner hamstrings. Before we were a little bit more concentrated there on the groin, inner thigh. Now we're a little bit further underneath the legs and the back side of the legs. Introducing this bit of discomfort. But in a, of course, safe and fairly contained and controlled environment so that we can explore. We can explore what it means to allow. Often the hardest thing that we do is to allow and surrender and accept and move through whatever challenging or painful things come to us in our lives. Whatever we might encounter that throws us off balance. Or perhaps it's not something specific for you, an event in your life, but instead a real opportunity to awaken perhaps to very old patterns, or old stories, or old ways of being that you can sense you're ready to let go of. Maybe things that aren't serving you anymore. Perhaps things that are causing you harm. Things that are causing you harm that you're engaging in, right? I think something that we probably all do and often become aware of at some point. And we think, oh, why on earth am I continuing to do this thing that I can tell is actually harming me, or perhaps not good for someone else either? So maybe your act here of just being with this sensation and continuing to soften in with the exhale and soften the muscles and soften the effort is your way of telling yourself that you can, in fact, do those hard things and allow. Another few moments here. Start to make your way out. Rising up slowly. We're in these poses for some fairly long holds, so we're gonna come out as slow as we can go. So neutral spine here. And then as you're ready, you can start to set aside the props you might have had in front. Bring the hands up to the backs of the legs and just start to bring them in closer. We'll bring the soles of the feet to the mat. And we'll just pause there. So I'm going to come off my prop that was underneath the hips. And I like to just bring the hands behind me for support, lean in. Knees bent. So keep tuning in here, tuning into perhaps that now shifting and changing sensation. And it might feel nice to extend the legs out in front of you and take little movements there, little windshield wipers through the feet. Maybe even a little gentle bounce. And then it will sit up nice and tall. Any option really that you like here down through the legs. We're just going to come into a twist either side and we'll be there for a few breaths. So if there's any variation that you like, maybe you could do the variation I'm doing here. We'll start on the right. So twisting over to the right, I've opted to hug that right knee up and into the chest and keep the left leg long. You might keep things more simple and just be here with both of the legs extended. So nothing super particular or fancy that we're looking for here, except to move the spine a little bit as we unwind from our last couple of poses. One more breath in, one more breath out, and then we'll take it over to the left. So if you had your legs in that same configuration as me, you can switch it up. One more breath in. One more breath out. And let's release, and we're going to come on in to our final shape. So this final shape is going to be a reclined hero pose. So you, of course, have options here too. If you already know that this isn't the right pose for you, what we'll do instead is just focus on that opening through the chest. And we don't need a big opening through the chest because remember, we're using time here. Time will do the work. So I might just suggest a bolster, as simple as that, lying back on the bolster. It might feel nice to have your legs here in constructive rest. I think that's a great option. So that's one option. If you do like reclined hero, but you find it fairly intense for you, maybe especially across the quads there, front of the thighs, you might take one side at a time, and I'll let you know when to switch. I like to keep the other leg in sort of this butterfly configuration, and then I'll start with the left leg in that hero shape. So if that's you, you can come on in now. Or if you'd rather, you could come in to hero. And the variation that I'm going to suggest for hero pose is actually a little bit different. I'm going to sit right back on the shins and the feet instead of having them spread away to the outside of the hips, as we might traditionally think. And I'm going to open up the knees. Then before I come back onto that prop, and you might really want to build up this prop behind you, so build up some blankets, have it be, again, gentle, comfortable. I'm just going to gently tuck the tailbone there a little bit so I can find a sense of broadness and opening through this front part of the body. And then I'll come back. So I like to come back here just onto the forearms. You might also just walk the arms back, make them like kickstands. And of course, if you're able to, you can build up those props behind you. And come back onto those. So I really suggest this variation of hero as something that I think, at least in some bodies, and certainly in mine, is going to feel a lot more accessible and a lot less intense. Otherwise, you could have that more traditional hero on one side, and then I'll let you know when to switch. So close your eyes. Find yourself once again just arriving here in this moment, tuning in, reminding yourself again that this moment is what it is. It is fully what it is. And it doesn't have to be any different. Maybe that reminder allows you to soften a little more deeply into your experience. Maybe that experience is simply the full experience of this pose, the sensation it creates. Allowing for a little bit of discomfort. Maybe this moment is feeling still pretty full. Maybe it's taking a lot of courage. Courage to have started the video, to know that you probably have to be still with your experience for a time. If you have your one-legged hero, this is your time now to switch sides. So know that just this act of tuning in, of asking, how do I really feel, is already a pretty courageous act. Especially in a world that is so externally focused. Pretty courageous act to be deeply in touch with who you are. To want to explore even the difficult things. In a world where it is so easy to distract yourself, to push those things away, to escape, maybe through pleasure. It's pretty courageous just to let yourself be. Couple more moments here. Take a deep breath and see if you can feel the chest and heart space expand. Let yourself see what it would feel like to just take in the vulnerability of the shape. Opening to whatever that means to you. And then exhale to soften in. If you're lowered down onto those props, come up slowly, first lifting onto the forearms. And then from forearms, lift up onto the hands. And then finally, walk your way up out of that shape. You can set your props off to the side, and we're coming into Shavasana. Corpse pose, our final resting pose. So if there's any prop that you'd like to have, maybe that's covering up with a blanket, or bringing a folded blanket or bolster or pillow for underneath the knees. Go ahead and grab that, set yourself up. Close the eyes once again. One more opportunity here to check in with any sensations. Sensations lingering in the body from any of the shapes. Maybe sensations that were present when we started the class. Maybe that means you observe something that's shifted. Maybe it means you observe something that stayed the same. Tuning in to all that there is there in the body and the being for you to explore. And really letting that practice be enough. And really, it's just the practice of getting curious. Maybe allowing yourself not to judge or not to run away into the thinking mind. But of course, that also means being curious when you do get lost in a thought, or you do catch a judgment or a story. Because that presence is always there within. Maybe that presence is as simple as noticing the rise and fall of the breath. And just fully experiencing that rhythm, relishing in that experience of the breath. Here you are, breathing in and breathing out. The steady pulse of life. Let's close our practice by bringing the hands to heart center. The light in me bows to the light in you. Namaste.